This week on the podcast, I am joined by Ari Kaplan, a pioneer in the Moneyball era in baseball. He did a lot of heavy lifting in terms of educating the market on the how and the why of analytics. And I think that's very different from practicing AI and data analytics in today's atmosphere where it's all the rage and everybody knows that you have to be more data driven. I have a ton of respect for those at the very edge of norms because it is such a hard and creative challenge to bring something new to market, and especially so for new ideas and new ways of doing things. Ari talks about how he got started in sports analytics, how he got discovered, and that's a great story in terms of being out there, showing your work, and creating your own luck. We also talk about how to win people over and overcome resistance to new ideas, what that looks like, the type of pushback that you're going to be getting, and how to overcome that as an innovator and a trailblazer of new ideas. Of course, we talk about Gen AI, in particular about Databricks' recent acquisition of Mosaic ML for $1.3 billion and what that means for companies being able to train their own custom large language models in-house. I really like the fact that Ari bridges the world between the pre-analytics and the post-analytics era. He has some amazing perspectives and stories. It was a real treat to have him on the show. Now, without further ado, I give you my conversation with Ari Kaplan, the head of AI evangelism at Databricks. Hey, Ari, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Hey, Manny, great to be here.
You were one of the original folks bringing analytics into the world of baseball. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what that was like, being one of the first on the analytics front. Now we sort of take it for granted across many different types of industry, business, but also sports. But you were one of the first ones coming in and saying, hey, I think we can do this better with data and analytics.
Sure. Well, yeah, it's been a big honor to have worked in the sports arena for many decades. And I was told that I'm one of the first 5 people known. There may be more. If there are folks out there, let me know. But that worked in what you might call like a data analyst in these days. And now what's remarkable is I've seen that grown to tens of thousands of people. There are college degrees in sports analytics, huge conferences like the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics, and it's gone global. And having gone with only a few teams, having maybe one person, to having 10, then 20, then 30. Now it's not uncommon to have 40 people, like in the whole spectrum of data engineering to data scientists to visualization experts. So it's been fascinating, and I hope we'll be able to talk about how the whole every industry, but certainly sports, has iteratively been building and reinventing itself now with Gen AI. So having started out, it was back in the late 80s. I was a student at Caltech. If you've ever heard of the Big Bang Theory, that's it. That's kind of a portrayal of my life. I almost think some of those characters were based on my real life friends, but pretty accurate, and didn't really, I just kind of woke up. I had been a fan growing up of the Mets, and just always realized some of the players I liked would have negative statistics. Some of the players I didn't like would have positive statistics. Kind of everyone had that feeling, but I came up kind of on the spot with ways to evaluate players that tries to take luck out of the equation and also tries to isolate your statistics to you. So how would you, Manny, perform if you're on a team? If you have better players around you, would that affect your statistics, and vice versa? So one of the genres of statistics I came up with that still is in use are the letter X. So wherever today you see X for expected in any sport, like expected goals, expected wins, was the letter I came up with, and just the paradigm. If you are a basketball player, like what would be the expected score that you have based on a typical around you? In baseball, one of the big challenges, and it still gets me, they haven't changed the rule, but it's more of a rule issue. You are a starting pitcher and you allow 3 runs to get on base The manager kind of pulls you, brings in a relief pitcher. And if that relief pitcher allows none of your runs to score, that's great for you. If they allow one, two, or all three to score, they're completely charged to you. The relief pitcher's job was to not allow them to score. And there's been no statistic that faults them if they score or credits them if they refrain. So your starting pitcher ERA could vary typically 10, 20, 30% per year solely on how others perform. So that's really like even a rule factor. But yeah, I'd call that a statistic. But that's kind of where I started. And the fun story behind that is, I graduated high school. I'm a freshman in college, did some research, and then I start getting in the news, CNN, the Today Show, LA Times. Then the Dodger GM saw me in the LA Times, Fred Claire, still good friends with him, and looked me up, called my dorm hallway. We didn't have cell phones back then. And my roommate just says, "Hey, this guy says he's the GM of the Dodgers, wants to talk to you." And I went on the phone and he introduced himself. "I'm Fred Claire." He was humble. He didn't say right away, "You can help me," but he said, "I read about you. It looks promising. I think you can help me. I want to, let's discuss it. Can you come in sometime in the next couple of months?" And I said, "I'll come in this afternoon. Don't leave." And, before he could change his mind or anything. Yeah, we went in. And so I went instantly from being, a fan who came up with some interesting ideas to sitting in the dugout with Eddie Murray, Oral Hershiser, John Wetland, Kirk Gibson. I was looking back on it. I wore a suit and tie since I had no idea I'd be meeting players, but some folks snapped pictures of me and they were resurfaced a couple of years ago. I hadn't seen them in a long time.
What was it about Fred Claire that he reached out to you and was willing to give you this opportunity? Was it something to do with the team and where it was with the team? Did he already have a bent towards that? Because I'm sure that was atypical. That wasn't really the norm for someone like that to bring in an analytics person to help the team.
Yeah, great question. And this is like really reflective of the people, even every industry today. So number one is he put the team and the company first. He, some great leaders surround themselves, with people that are better in their respective fields than others. I worked with Larry Ellison, and he would also like to put people respectively better. Like he would tell me, if I could do your job better than you can, then we're both in trouble. That was kind of from like one perspective, but Fred was just like, he just wants to better the team. He already actually had a really great team. The 88 Dodgers were amazing, but he has decisions every day. Should we trade for this pitcher? Should we keep this pitcher? Who in our minor leagues could come up and perform and who can't? So he just wanted to help him make better decisions. He also at that time didn't know, maybe no one was really doing this. Could we help the manager, for example, determine which relief pitcher to put in based on that one example at what time? And so it wasn't just his idea. He brought in the players. He introduced me to the manager and wanted to get their feedback too. So it's that type of inclusionary leader. Like he would tell me, we're partners. We started a company, Scoutables, together, had many, many decades of friendship, but he was one of the few GMs that would call like all of his scouts. There are many GMs that like just don't reach out to their employees, would have office hours where anyone and anyone can come and talk. So it's that type of personality that Fred had that he just wanted to improve. He had no ego to make it seem like he was in charge of everything. He was kind of like the guiding force, almost like, different people are all trying to pull and push in the same direction. And he was kind of like the light, the facilitator of it all.
That's a great example because one, he's on top. He has a good team. Two, he's trying out different ways to get an edge, and analytics is new to everyone. Maybe that's something that can work out. And then three, he's bringing in many people from within the organization, from outside the organization, like you, to try it out and see if there's something there.
Exactly, and that's great. A storyline for any business. There's some businesses that are doing poorly, and you could either keep doing the same or try to bring in alternate views. There's really, there's no one answer. But in sports, there are teams like when they fire their GM and they look for new direction, just promote from within, and that may work. But a lot of times, I've seen the most success if you're in that failing state to bring in, new insights from outside the organization, supplement them with people who have industry knowledge. Not saying do that all the time, but yeah, there are other like owners are loyal to their people, and you end up 30 years, they just never improve and they never bring in people from the outside. And that doesn't work. But then there are teams like, yeah, Fred, he already just won the World Series. There are teams that are already public and profitable. But you know what? One thing we'll hopefully talk about, Gen AI, is like one of the latest, real game changers out there. And you can experiment with the people you already have who have no experience in Gen AI, or you could go to trade shows, learn about it, try to do it yourself, or you could bring in consultants or, hire people with that experience. So even if you're doing well, you always have to keep evaluating. But to your point, Manny, it was Fred, even at the pinnacle of success, to say, I'm not stopping. The industry's changing. I want to continue to be the best I can be.
I like how you made it easy for Fred to find you. I'm sure you were not typical in that respect either, where you were out there and you were pushing this view that, hey, the way you've been doing baseball is wrong, that you should be using more data and analytics to do that. So how did you do that? How did you get on Fred's radar? What compelled you to go and get this message out there that allowed for Fred to find you and bring you into the organization? You're an example of someone creating their own luck, where you're out there, you have a bullhorn, you have a message, and you're allowing other people to come and find you. And that's just a great tactic. It's a great way to get opportunities. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I think it's just, trying to create something that never existed before. That's where my brain is. I like to kind of be on the either creating an entire new market or being on the leading edge where it's a market that people fully like baked in yet, but you have a product that actually works. So when you bring someone in the room, you could say, yes, you can get started now. So that, that's one thing I love about my, current company with Databricks is, we're in that, created the lake house and not stopping there. Now the whole data intelligence. But looking back on my career, almost every job I've ever had, and hopefully I inspire someone listening, has not been there's a job opening and let me apply for an existing job opening. I did that like once or twice, but almost every job was me going to an owner of the baseball team. I approached the owner of the Cubs, approached some CEO or president of some public companies, and just say, hey, you don't have this role. This role would be great. Let's create it. And with Databricks, I'm their first head of evangelism. With DataRobot, my prior company, first head of evangelism, and with the Dodgers, it was just painting the picture of somebody from their perspective. This might help you. You're a very likable person, Manny, but also seeming excited and likable that, you're going to do a lot of the work. You're going to come to them with ideas. People are all human in the end, and they're all super busy. So if you see something that can help them easily, then the president, the GM, they will carve out new budget for you. So that's how I kind of wanted to be out there, creating something new. And then my personality is once everyone's doing it, like all the ideas I had early on, every team does it. And I get bored of when it's common. So I want to keep kind of surfing the wave to the latest.
That's such a great example. We need to look at that and see that as a template, because as technology is overturning and changing so many industries and so many jobs, there's just going to be new jobs that are going to be available, new roles that are going to be available that don't even exist yet with all these new technologies coming onto the stage, like prompt engineer, right? That wasn't a role that existed 12 months ago. Now, because of Gen AI, large language models, that's a role now. and you got a great example of how, hey, you have to define where the market is going, where the value is, and you have to be proactive about going and educating people on why they need that at their organization.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting is whether it's software developing, like the prompt engineering, some jobs are going to go away. Some jobs are like parts of it will be automated and then there'll be entirely new jobs. Prompt engineering is great. Automation, LLM ops are jobs that haven't even been there since there aren't that many LLMs that companies have in production. There could be, I don't know, people like the ability to evaluate how good Gen AI is, like you have for a traditional machine learning model. You can say R squared is this, log loss is that, and you can evaluate how effective a model is. They don't really have any standards for LLM. So that could be a new job. And then 12 months from now, like who knows where things will be. So great opportunities for entrepreneurial people. Just since a company doesn't have a job for prompt engineering or whatever it is, doesn't mean if you approach them, they'll say no. So yeah,
Right.
grab your own life by its horns and make something.
No, that's right, and I think that's a good response. I oftentimes get the question around AI and automation and automating certain jobs, and I think that's a good response. Is like, yeah, there are going to be some jobs that are going to go away, but there's also probably 10 more new ones that are going to be created, and something that's going to be perfect for you. So go out there and instead of focusing on what's going away, focus on what's possible and build that.
Yeah, 100%. You always be thinking towards the future. And then it is also tempting, just traditional machine learning, engineering, machine learning operations, ML ops. There's a lot of job opportunity, but a couple years from now, a lot of that will be automated. So you're going to have to level up your game. Like what would be an end programmer? Like you can now do GitHub copilots or Databricks. We have data intelligence. There's Microsoft coming up with every one of their Office suites. But yeah, you could just say, hey, here's some Python code, document it, and Gen AI will do it. So you're going to have to kind of up your game. So you could either live life in fear that like some of my job will be automated and I'm worried and have to keep ahead, or you could be on the positive side. Let me get ahead of this, and just knowing how to like how to help fine tune an existing LLM is a skill that most companies don't know. So probably the next year, 2, 3, maybe 4, that's a great opportunity. Or you could live on the edge, and there's so many opportunities. There could be multi-million-dollar ideas that are real business. Like I saw that when the internet started. Companies were created just writing a Perl back then or a Python now script to scrape data off the internet and put it in a database and package it up. People made millions of dollars and had fun. So who knows? So much opportunity now.
I'm wondering if you can go back to your early days at the Mets organization. You're coming in as this new kid, leveraging a new way of trying to do baseball. I'm sure you got some resistance to that. A, did you get as much resistance as I think you did? And B, how did you overcome that? How did you eventually win people over?
Yeah, so it was not uncommon for people coming up with new thoughts or new ideas to get resistance. And then there's normal resistance. Like even myself, if somebody comes up with an idea to me, spend energy, spend your time and energy to do stuff. I have to-do lists through the roof. I kind of want to know, is this proven out? Is it not? Is it worth my time? So I don't always want to change just for the sake of change. And so I totally get natural resistance or skepticism, I could say, to change. But then there was steps above and beyond that, where it's like animosity, what you might call even abuse for, trying to shut things down when people felt their jobs were threatened. And I can tell, like you're only being introduced to me on this podcast. I am like one of the least threatening people. I'm very collaborative. I want to help out. I just love being wherever I am. But even with that, people many times would never even meet with me to know what it is no to. So like you don't even get a chance to be in the room. And then I found out, over time, more progressive people, for example, scouts. There's that whole thing in Moneyball where scouts and analysts come to head. But one of the things I did earlier on was automate a lot of the time consuming data collections of scouts. So scouts aren't just evaluating players, they traditionally record metrics. So they're there with a stopwatch, recording how quick they run from home to first. They're there with a radar gun. How fast is this pitcher throwing? And with technology, we're going back to 2007. There's technology in every stadium that records velocity and how quick people run. And if you can automate that, the scouts don't need to. So the self-reliant scouts would be very afraid. They're like, you can't automate recording speed of pitches, and you're like, yeah, you can. It's technology. But the great scouts loved it. They're like, you know what, Ari, recording how fast someone pitches, it's kind of beneath me. It's like I'm just recording like notes. What I'm really good at is evaluating the skills, and by not having to hold this gun and write down, there's like pitches a game. I just freed up half my time where I can sit back, think in my head, how is this player going to perform if we sign him? So the great scouts loved that automation. We automated the stuff they didn't want to record from, record keeping. So that was one thing, saving people time. So similar to what you see now with data science and AutoML, if you could save a data scientist all that messy part of, like ETL, loading in data, transforming data. For me, that's boring. For a lot of people, that's boring. But you have to do it to get the data in a state to analyze it. So you automate that, you're the hero. So that's one way to overcome resistance. Another is just giving them insights that they never had before, but those insights should be actionable. For example, when I joined the Cubs, we would get these reports on the team we're about to face. I kid you not, 900 pages of information. A lot of it was just historical. What did this pitcher do with that batter? And guess what? If they never faced each other, there would still be a printed page that had zeros, 0 hits, 0 walks, 0 runs. It was just like pointless. They should have filtered that out. And it was more trivia than action. So like whittling 900 pages down to automatically saying what are the strengths, weaknesses, habits, those are the insights the coaches and the managers would resonate with. So winning people over is to give them insights that help them, in this case, win more games or score more runs or put in the right player at the right situation. Like which pitcher has a weakness, for example, against a curveball, you should know that. And then when you choose which pitcher to pull in someone who can throw a good curveball. You match it against the opponent's weakness. So those are actionable, and those are things that won people over. And there's a great book I recommend on just that subject. It's called Big Data Baseball. I love the title, and it's about Clint Hurdle. Just had lunch with him last week in Nashville, but he was the manager of the Pirates, and he came up with huge resistance of shifting, which means positioning players to anticipate where a ball would be hit. It saves teams about 80 to 90 runs per year. And even though he was the manager, he was like the player's boss, technically, they would ignore him. They would gang up verbally on him and say, we're refusing. We're not going to do it. And then he would convince people. And then, out of 20 times, one would be hit like the old school way. If they were unshifted, it would have worked out. And then the players revert back saying, you know what, we would have won that game if it wasn't for your stupid idea. But over time, the industry over many years won out and saw, you know what, you can win 8 or 9 more games that way per year without spending more money, just using data. So yeah, the resistance was pretty remarkable, but I would find 1 or 2 people that would appreciate it and just kind of work with them. Right now you're in a situation where you don't really get that animosity. You get players and coaches that want it and people that just, they don't really care. They ignore it. So if like 1 out of 3 players really love it, then just work with them and that keeps you busy.
Right. I think, us professionals doing analytics and AI today, we have the benefit of it being a hot topic and everybody appreciating it now. You, at the very beginning, you probably, you had that as a headwind instead. So I really like those tidbits, and those have worked out for me as well. Automation in particular, when I started my career in the investment management space, one of the ways that I would ingratiate myself with seasoned professionals was by automating their data gathering and analytics and their spreadsheet work. They would spend hours doing this every week, and I came in and I said, hey, in exchange for you telling me about markets and how to get into my next role, I will automate all of this drudgery that you have to do every week, and I'll give you a nice presentation. And that was a good trade. That was a good fair trade. I was able to work that deal quite a bit. So that's a really good suggestion. And yes, new and actionable insights. That's spot on. It has to be something new and compelling, and it has to be actionable. You just can't do a data dump on someone and be upset at them not appreciating what you're doing. I think there's a lot of analytics professionals that are out there and they're generating a lot of reports and generating a lot of work and have a lot of code and have a lot of interesting data pipelines, and they get upset downstream at decision makers for not appreciating their work more. We're serving them. They're our customers, so we have to go to them and say, hey, do you find this valuable? Yes and no on a regular basis to make sure that we're delivering high value to them.
Yeah, great. And that's brilliant how you came through similarly, and you were there to help others be more efficient, and it's drudgery 100%. But getting these insights that are actionable. One great example going way back when I was with the Orioles, Cal Ripken, one of the greatest players, nicest players I ever worked with, had a similar thing where he would get these reports before every game saying this is what all of the potential opposing pitchers might throw to you. And he would be polite, but he would just ignore it. And I said, why are you ignoring this? Not threateningly, just like curious. Hey, why, you're such a good player. Why are you ignoring this? Is this not helpful? And he goes, it actually isn't. And I go, why not? And he goes, since I'm Cal Ripken at the time, like he was already like a celebrity superstar. He's also a super tall player. And he said, those reports basically are aggregated. This is what the opposing pitcher does in general to every batter. It's like, I want to know what this pitcher is going to do to me. Cal Ripken, a tall player, a player who, very rarely swings and misses. And so I started developing reports for him that gave a guess, like similar players to him, like maybe they do more of one thing than the other. So he ended up loving that. And I wouldn't have found out if I didn't engage him in conversation. And the same could be applied for everything. The end business users. I worked at Nielsen for a while, and we would have recommendations saying things like, don't sell your product in Walmart. And the customer would be like, this is crazy. We get 80% of our business from Walmart. Just since the numbers said that there's more efficient retailers, they just didn't put it in perspective. And like another account, sell, I can't give away the company name, but it was like a lipstick type of thing to, stop selling them in this one type of store. And they're like, you know what? We have a 5-year contract with them. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't stop. And like the data scientist, myself, we just didn't know, like our data didn't include contracts. So that's all part of the conversation. Once you know that, then you can put that into the model, exclude, filter out arrangements where you have a multi-year contract. That being said, what are your recommendations?
Absolutely. Providing that context, making sure that you're delivering value and continually going to the end customer. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your time at the Chicago Cubs as a Chicagoan, as a Cubs fan. Can you talk about how that came about? You said you went to the owner of the Chicago Cubs and you pitched them on setting up a new analytics department. That's in keeping with our theme from earlier in the show. Tell us how that came about.
It started back in 1995 when I was a consultant to the Cubs. But way back then, they would have scouting reports entered by hand and paper. So I developed some translation material where they could have scouts enter the reports into a database and then search through the database, kind of the democratization. So the GM can just ask, what are all the third base free agents in the minor leagues where a scout said they, are 60 or plus, which is a good score in their defensive ability. And boom, it would come out. So basically like an interface that would generate SQL code. So that's how I really got started with the Cubs. It was as a consultant, 95. Then I kept improving. Then I worked under Andy MacPhail, who was their GM at the time. So helping with not just analytics, but also started becoming a pro scout. So watching players as well. And then the new ownership, Tom Ricketts and family took over. And, I heard University of Chicago and big in finance. So I spent probably way too much time, but I came up with an incredible business plan. I guess I'll say it for the first time ever on your show, but Jerry Krause, who passed away, was my big mentor, and he helped me draft a lot of the messaging to, that would resonate with ownership. He was the GM of the Bulls for many years. Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman's boss was a major league scout, good friend of mine. But yeah, I just kind of pitched it and had the opportunity. They didn't really have any in-house analytics or data collection. That was a couple years after teams started collecting the spatial data. Yeah, so just made that whole proposal. Came on in and created that and had a lot of great memories.
How do you think the hands-on scouting responsibilities help you maybe better communicate the analytic and the value of what the data crunching was producing?
Yeah, so there's tangible and intangible benefits. The intangible is kind of one of the facts of life, and that humans are biased. And when I say biased, like not a negative thing, but just might be another word. But having been a recommender of some great players, like Curt Schilling recommended him converting from a reliever to a starter, helping identify, and trade for great players like Pedro Martinez, and identifying or recommending Hunter Pence gets called up to the majors. So having a bunch of really good wins under my belt, just people like, it puts you in a different category, even though there could be somebody in high school right now or somebody in elementary school that is really good. They just don't have that track record, but they could be just as good as anyone else. But having that track record, people kind of trust you more, which is interesting. But then in terms of data, it's a really interesting thing that in our case, these are humans. So statistics and analytics are helpful to answer questions like how might they perform in the future based on similar players in the past. Could be helpful for how much is a player worth economically, very similar to any other industry. You mentioned investment banking. There's facts, but then there's like humans and businesses, and markets are not always aligned with math functions. Like human consumer behavior is different. People purchase differently when they're hungry or not. So with scouting and analytics, my approach was anything that could be quantified, I would do, and then understand where the gaps are. So for example, I'd sit with Orel Hershiser, great pitcher, and just watch games with him for days or weeks. And he would just say, hey, I noticed this pitcher, it's called climb the ladder. His first pitch starts low, then he subsequently pitches higher and higher. And not everyone does that, but he said that, and that's something you can quantify. This is a pitcher that climbs the ladder. Then you make, it's called feature engineering. Then that's a new variable I make. And the data scientists have a new flag. Are you climb the ladder pitcher? Yes or no? Are you a pitcher that a scout would say he's not afraid to pitch inside to lefties? That's a phrase I hear. That is quantifiable. So now you have a new variable, not afraid to pitch inside to lefties. And that becomes one of your many variables or features. And some of them are very actionable. Some of them are not. Some of them are just characteristics that don't really affect how good or bad you are. And then there's like all of these gaps that you just simply can't quantify. It's a scout using their gut to say this player, like the hardest thing to quantify is if there's a future talent that the player has not exhibited, yet, but the scout thinks they can learn it in the future. So scout Jake Arrieta with the Cubs was a good example. We saw, when I say we, it was really like other scouts who watched him closer than I did, that if we change some performance behavior, some mechanics, we think he could add a pitch type to his repertoire and get better command, better ability to control where the pitch goes. And that is exactly what happened. And he was part of the world champion team. But that's where analytics can't really help you. It's like imagining a future if you change the behavior of a player. And then, yeah, I guess that's similar to, I did some work with Pepsi and their innovation team. More than half of all new products they come up with, a dill flavored popcorn or whatever, they don't know how it will do. And over half of them fail, like miss their target dramatically within the first year. So that's like a lot. You have to spend time, invest it, create a product, do a test market, and still half of them fail. So that's kind of like the analogy of where you need a to predict what humans might do.
There's some important lessons there that by getting your hands dirty as an analytics professional, that you have more credibility. So when you do spot something, people are more likely to hear you out and at least try out whatever it is that you're recommending. Because as you said, some people may not even give you the time of day to even try out the idea that you're pitching them. And then this domain expertise that allows you to differentiate between what is quantifiable and what is not. Not everything that is important is quantifiable, at least with the measurements that we have right now. Maybe new tools will come onto the scene, but right now there is still a lot of value in things that are not very quantifiable and developing some sort of intuition on them. And the Pepsi is a great example. When you bring to market new products, new ideas that are a function of changing dynamics, new environmental factors, or just brand new altogether, you don't have a lot of data on that, and you should go for another set of tools in that respect, not just always go to your analytics toolbox to try to always solve it in the same way. Switching over to outside of baseball and outside of sports, how do you see the AI data transformation work going at the companies that you're working with at Databricks? Do you feel that companies are able to navigate this well? I'm wondering, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing as companies try to be more analytics and data driven?
Yeah. So great question. In that I've seen the evolvement of just data, the technology behind the data, like structured when I worked with Oracle for a while, to semi-structured to unstructured, real time like IoT, and now social media, and now it's Gen AI. How do you understand structured and unstructured data combined? And you could do traditional methods, which are effective, but they could be time consuming and not unified. But in the last year, this whole generative AI, I was hoping for it as a science fiction fan growing up, but that's a lot of what we're seeing now. And the good thing is, not just generative people can create fun artwork, or you can restore Beatles songs and stuff like that, but it is very applicable to businesses. People naturally kind of rest at LLMs, which are really text-based, everything from chatbots to summarization, since that's what the first one, OpenAI ChatGPT, is in. And there are great use cases every industry can have. But in addition to that, there's lots of other great Gen AI. The other thing I see for businesses, like what you're saying with what you experienced, how can you automate a lot of the processes? There was something called RPA, robotic process automation, which is kind of like mimicking keystrokes and business decisions. That is getting better, but just actual code generation. You can take your code and say, debug my code, do quality assurance, make synthetic data that mimics what I have, but don't use real social security numbers. You can ask it, like, write a pipeline that merges this data set and that data set and use fuzzy logic to match names. Mike is Mike, Christopher are the same, and it'll just write a program, and it works really well, and it's really only been about a year old. So that is what I'm seeing, like a big shift in the last year. My last company thought people were kind of getting the idea of automated machine learning is valuable and makes sense, but you had to still sell people. You needed champions to convince, here's the use case, let's dip our toe in, get a win. And now with Gen AI, at least at Databricks, we are seeing executives come to us, and I imagine the whole market's the same, saying, I hear about Gen AI. What can our company do to find a use case? So it's almost like, here's the technology, let's find use cases to get wins. So it's almost flipped its head where the non-technical people are clamoring for it. And I think that's going to be more and more in the next year, since, I find, I go around the world and speak a lot, that everyone's fascinated. Maybe 6 months ago, like 1 out of 10 companies had something act like their own LLM in production. And now for like major companies, maybe it's double it, maybe 1 out of 5 companies. But pretty soon, every company is going to have some form of Gen AI in production. And it's just going to be in like an arms race to get the next, and then the next one, and then the next one. And the whole world we live in is going to be so different.
In my experience, having been selling AI and different ML services, I've just really appreciated Gen AI as another option to go to market with, because in the past, it was either unsupervised learning techniques or supervised learning techniques. And unsupervised learning techniques is great. You don't need a ton of labeled data for that. You can show some value. And then supervised learning techniques, you need labels, so you need to clean up a whole bunch of data, and it takes some time to train your models, and then you ship that. But I feel with Gen AI, you can show something really fast, very compelling, and start generating some ROI, and at least get people on that path towards a more data-driven type of organization. Then they can get into unsupervised learning techniques, and then they can get into supervised learning techniques, and just start that journey forward. So I've just really appreciated having Gen AI as a quick value generating type of option as we're trying to get people going on AI and machine learning and analytics.
Yeah, 100%. And it's accelerating like exponentially. So ChatGPT, I don't know, 100 million plus investment. The folks are geniuses. They changed the world. They're going to be, there are going to be statues of them, or at least, movies and documentaries, and they're going to be remembered, Sam throughout history and his team. But $100 million, a lot of companies can do that much, much cheaper and quicker. Like Databricks, we acquired a company called Mosaic ML, which helps companies make their own LLMs on their own data, secured, so your healthcare or finance, your data doesn't get out, and it's built on your context, your linguistics. So ChatGPT has information on Taylor Swift. Your investment banking firm probably doesn't care about it. In baseball, if a there's no more gas in the tank, means they're getting tired in that game. But if you just do a general, use a third party, it doesn't understand that nuance of running out of gas. My point is, $100 million in the past to create an LLM, you can do a decent one. We did one for $30, 30, not 30 million, 30. You could do one, with a couple billion parameters for 1,000, tens of billions of parameters for a couple thousand. And that's just going to accelerate it. So to your point, making your own customized LLM is going to be fast and easy. And then things like LangChain and Hugging Face, and there'll probably be others popping up where it's like, how do you chain an LLM that's really good at one piece, get the output to input to another, get that output to input to another, and then the community starts building those pieces together, or companies start selling other pieces like as widgets. Like things are going to exponentially go up and up and up faster.
We're seeing a huge boom in tooling and options for companies to do that. So I don't think the technology is going to be the limiting factor for companies that want to get an edge with data and analytics and ML. And I'm wondering if you have an opinion in terms of are going to be those main factors. Is it going to be cultural? Is it going to be leadership? Is it going to be a function of market pressure and competitors? If you have to bet on companies within an industry, the ones that are going to be the winners with AI and machine learning, and the ones that are going to be the losers, what factors do you think are going to differentiate them?
Yeah. So in the short term, like meaning the next 1 to 2 years, the big problem are like accuracy. You might have heard of hallucinations of LLMs.
Hmm.
If you're in marketing and like your advertisement is a little bit off, nobody really cares or maybe even notice. But if you're a medical or like legal and you're trying to automate, like what legal precedent is it for this court case and it's wrong or it's missing information or something, that could be a problem. You know, you misrepresent or you miss an opportunity. And then if you're in medical, if you misprescribe something or recommend something. So that's the biggest challenge is we as humans, we as like people in businesses, that's the biggest challenge I think is for those use cases where you need the accuracy, it's still kind of a free for all. So that's where, tools like what we have at Databricks, we have Unity Catalog, where you have transparency and lineage. So, this LLM or this generative AI or this predictive traditional machine learning is based on these, I think I'm holding up 8 fingers, these 8 data sources. And this data source was 5 years old. This one is 3 seconds ago. So, like understanding where the data comes from, who has access to what, if things are masked, are they masked appropriately? So I think the next couple of years, that's going to be a big challenge. The reason being that if you don't trust something, depending on the industry, you're not going to implement it or implement it with as much rigor as you would. And then I would say, yeah, the secondary one is just people lacking the vision to, if it's a use case that helps them, the vision to make that leap to implement it. I'm not saying reinvent your business just since there's a cool new idea. That may be a strong yes. It may be a strong no. You have to evaluate it. But if it adds value, the companies that are going to like make those leaps and implement some of that automation are going to come out way ahead. So much so that you could get such a big market jump that the secondary folks can't ever catch up. Kind of like Netflix, what Netflix did.
That's right. I think that for professionals within these larger organizations, we need to be mindful of that it's not just about that notebook that you can spin up and show a good use case. You need to show how you're going to track the lineage of the data that got to that model, how it was trained. You need to be able to show receipts. You need to be able to show that it's not biased in a certain way. It's got to be trustworthy. It's got to be robust. It's got to work well in production all the time. And that's 90% of the battle in terms of winning folks over within the organization outside of just the model and the output of the model itself.
Exactly. And that trust, is super strong. I personally wouldn't trust always. I'd always be on the worry, like what data are we using? What are the insights? Are the insights good? So right now it's kind of a patchwork, to the point where there's no real standard to say this LLM is better than that one at response. There are starting to do that where you can look at humans go through and say, this response, like this summarization, I ask it, who are the presidents? It's accurate. You click yes or no, or you modify it, and then it learns from there. And that's individual companies doing it on their own data. I imagine there'll be like a marketplace where humans like evaluate LLMs and sell their services up into a point where that there's enough variety that you don't need to do that as much. But for the next 5 years, I think either the job or the role will be like farms of low-paid people that are knowledgeable that could go through all these boring tasks and as a human tag accurate yes or no or here's the fix. But that will be one of the slowdowns.
Are you getting any pushback, any concern on the pace of AI development and progress? at least what I've seen is in the general news, there's a fair amount of worrying and a little bit of doomerism, but amongst practitioners is a lot of excitement, and I think amongst the business community there's also a lot of excitement to put this to work and actually generate value. You, as you're going into these organizations, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of doom whenever there's like a major thrust. When I was a kid, the doom was you play Dungeons and Dragons and you worship the devil, which not in my case 100%. And then like the internet coming out. I remember talking
Right.
to a major retailer, and they're like, we do not want a web page since people won't come into our store. I'm like, you need a web page. Just please just put it like, where are your stores located? And they didn't even want to register their own domain. I should have spent $20 and registered, and well, that then you have it. But yeah, so there's like doom and gloom. It'll shut our old business model down, and then mobile software. People would say, I don't want to be connected, and I'm like, you will be checking your email from the grocery store, and they're like, there's no way. I'm going to wait a few hours until I'm home. And then it shifted. You're going to get cancer of the brain by holding your phone too close. So now you have, the same fear of the unknown with AI. The one thing I personally do fear is I do worry about deep fakes, not necessarily business, but in society. I had a General Petraeus on one of my podcasts earlier, and 2 years ago that was a big concern, but now it's like real. You can make any video of any politician or entertainer saying anything you want, and I personally can't tell the difference. And in America, there's lawsuits that prevent it, but there's nothing stopping these like misinformation deep fakes from society. But yeah, the other is just like some AI gets put into production that is the output's important, like a recommended healthcare outcome, and it's in significant enough cases harmful. That's the one thing. Ever since I started in data science, there's a saying that no model's perfect, but some are better than others, and it's still up to the human to say, if your accuracy is 80%, is that good enough? For a marketing campaign, probably. For landing someone on the moon, not. Is 90% accurate enough? 99%. So again, these are going to face that decision with generative AI. When should we release it? But yeah, ethics could be a big concern. Hallucinations, big concern. Security, a big concern. So all those are legit, which is why you need transparency.
You having at the beginning of the internet and mobile, and sort of now this talk of Gen AI being bigger than the internet, being bigger than mobile. I'd love to hear your take on it. What say you? Do you think that Gen AI is going to be even bigger than those two trends, or too soon to tell? I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the one thing where it does have a chance to be bigger is that the internet worked at this company, Interaccess, here in Chicago, where people didn't have home DSL. People didn't have internet in their home. So there was a huge cost to get higher speed cables installed, even transatlantic cables. That was before you could do things with satellites. So there was a huge, decade long cost to build out the infrastructure so the internet could happen at the scale it does today. So with Gen AI, the barrier to entry is like zero. It's using already created internet infrastructure. So that's why I think it'll certainly be faster and, bigger than that. Yeah, I would say it's absolutely. But the thing that I question is like, it's kind of Gen AI is already like the lines blurring what the internet is and Gen AI. There's a bit of overlap, but yeah, I think that the money impact, will be bigger than what the money impact of every major company going onto the internet, which is mind-boggling.
I can't tell until it plays out necessarily, but Gen AI seems like it has a good a chance as any. And wrapping up here, Ari, I guess as you reflect on your career and the great accomplishments that you have, I'm wondering what advice would you like to give to those folks coming behind you, other analytics professionals, other leaders that want to leverage data and machine learning and AI to generate more business value, to create growth. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that comes to mind that might be worthwhile to pass along to that next generation?
Yeah, I know there's so much, great advice to give. I guess, if I were to pick one, community is really important. There's user groups. At one point I was president of the Worldwide Oracle User Group when they acquired Java, PeopleSoft, MySQL. But so I saw firsthand just the value of what being part of a tech community is. But being part of that, sharing ideas. I'm a big proponent of open source, which is a form of community, people working together, whether you contribute to open source or a part of it. But yeah, just encourage people. This podcast is part of that. It's kind of one directional you're hearing, from us, but there's so many different like local meetups, national, international, going to conferences. It's kind of weird. Like you could watch stuff on Zoom, but every time I go to an in-person event and I meet people, it's like this intangible, like ideas just get thrown around. My brain resonates like better with ideas, and I make friends that last a while. And by the way, anyone listening, I do encourage you to, connect with me on LinkedIn. But yeah, I would just say being part of a community, sharing ideas, it's much better if you relax a little and like make sure, in addition to being if you're an individual contributor, to like branch out and making solutions as part of a team is just the greatest feeling. So community is big advice.
Absolutely key. And to your point of attending conferences and meeting people in person, that's how we got to connect. We were connected on social media, but then I attended one of your talks and got a lot of great ideas, and now we're having this conversation. So definitely second that. Well, Ari, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and sharing your experience and amazing stories and just great lessons. I'm sure a lot of people are going to take some valuable tidbits from this conversation. So thank you very much. How do people get in touch with you? How do people follow your work?
Yeah, so just on LinkedIn, look up Ari Kaplan. That's really the best way to connect with me. I do have like Twitter. I'm Ari Kaplan 1, but LinkedIn is where I'm most active. I actually, as you see, I'll post references to this, but as I travel around the world and meet people, I like to give like little snippets of learning, hopefully be entertaining, hopefully be thought provocative. Hope folks follow me. And Manny, I hope I get to see you. Not even hope, I'm sure I'll see you again in Chicago many times.
One last thing before you go. I hate to put you on the spot, but when is the book coming? When is the Ari Kaplan book coming? Or is there one out there already that I didn't see?
Yeah, I don't know. There's been a lot of videos and articles written about me, but I don't know. I'm love to do it, like you say, when it's all over. Probably now's a great time to write about the baseball world. Like the last year, I had a consulting through Databricks with the Texas Rangers, and they won the World Series. Very, very heavy on what we call the modern data stack. So that in my journey from the beginning through the modern data stack would be great. But the one chapter remaining to be written, if you could see Databricks, if you haven't heard, we're now the third largest private company in America and created the Lakehouse, which is incredible. Our founders created Apache Spark and MLflow, Delta Lake, huge open source. And we're not stopping. We're now like leading in what's called the data intelligence. So, hopefully we'll go IPO, and then that will, I don't want to say last chapter. I'm not that old, but that would be the good chapter to do the book at that point.
I think at this point, Ari, you have enough material for 3 bestsellers. Yeah, please let me know when those come out so I can be first in line for them. Well, Ari, thank you again for taking the time. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, great to have met you, and thank you for asking me to come on. It was a great time. I appreciate it.